Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Hello everyone, welcome to my Update US Gossip channel. Drew cancels Scout's restraining orders if Alexis helps Willow stay out of jail. Drew Cain may drop the Scout Courtroom restraining orders if Alexis Davis will help Willow Tate avoid prison. Alexis might be the one to strike a deal because Willow is about to sign a new contract with an attorney. Martin Gray agreed to assist with Willow's arraignment, but that was the extent of his legal assistance. Drew was dissatisfied with that information, but Martin made it clear that he was unable to represent both the victim and the woman who was accused of shooting him. Martin advised Willow to find the best criminal defense attorney possible since she's definitely in a serious situation. If this case doesn't go her way, Willow could spend the rest of her life in prison. Rick Lansing is back following his basement captivity stint and has been spilling a bogus cult story. However, Drew may not be interested in rehiring someone so unreliable when Willow's future is at stake. In addition, spoilers indicate that Willow will be hiring a new attorney, so Rick, who has previously represented her, cannot be the candidate. Instead, Willow will have a different lawyer, and Alexis is probably going to be the one. During the week of October 20th to 24th, Alexis will react to an enticing new proposal. Drew will probably insist that if Alexis is willing to tackle Willow's case, he can make it worth her while when it comes to Scout. Although Drew filed restraining orders against Alexis, Molly Lansing Davis, Christina Corinthos Davis, Danny Morgan and Rocco Falconeri, he may be willing to drop them if Alexis cooperates. If Alexis agrees to take Willow's case, Drew might promise that Scout will be able to see her family once more. On the other hand, Drew might try to get Alexis to agree to drop the restraining orders only if she actually gets a not guilty verdict. In any case, Alexis may be unable to refuse this offer. It makes sense that Alexis will reach an agreement with Drew and become Willow's new lawyer in the coming episodes. Carly Corinthos Benson stood at the bay window, watching the sun cut through the fog over Port Charles Harbor. She'd been up since dawn, pacing, worrying, replaying last night's words from Drew Cain over and over in her mind. "I'll drop the restraining orders if Alexis defends Willow." The statement echoed like a haunting refrain she couldn't shake, each syllable weighted with guilt, strategy, and desperation. Upstairs at GH, the atmosphere was no less tense. Willow Tate Corinthos sat on the edge of her hospital bed, her hands trembling slightly as she read the official notice of her arraignment. The ink looked fresh, almost mocking in its precision. Her eyes blurred as she reached the line that spelled out the charges: attempted murder, aggravated assault, unlawful possession of a firearm. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she remembered the sound of the gunshot, that single, horrifying second when panic and protection collided. She hadn't meant to shoot Drew. She'd only meant to stop the chaos that night, to protect Michael from another dangerous secret spiraling out of control. But the truth in Port Charles was rarely clean. "Martin says I should find another attorney," she whispered to Michael, who stood by the door, his arms folded in that stubborn, protective stance that reminded her too much of Sonny. "He said he can't defend me and Drew." Conflict of interest. Michael sighed, his jaw tightening. "We'll figure this out. We always do." But his voice cracked on the last word, betraying the fear that lived in his chest. "Mom's already calling Diane Miller. She's got the best connections in the state." Willow shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No. Diane's already been disqualified because she handled parts of Drew's ELQ case." "And Rick Lansing?" She trailed off, shaking her head in disbelief. "He's out there telling people I'm part of some cult. After what he went through in that basement? He's lost it." Michael's phone buzzed then, vibrating across the sterile bedside table. He glanced down, frowning at the name that flashed on the screen. Drew Cain. For a moment, he hesitated. "He wants to talk to me. Probably about Scout again." Willow swallowed hard. "Then go. Please. Whatever it takes to fix this, for Scout, for you, for me. Just, don't let this destroy us." Meanwhile, across town at the Invader office, Alexis Davis was in the middle of editing an editorial when her phone rang. Alexis Davis, she answered briskly, her tone a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. She wasn't expecting a call that would change everything. Alexis, it's Drew, came the deep, gravelly voice on the other end. She froze. I see you're not calling about the weather. He sighed. No. I'm calling about Willow. There was a pause. Alexis leaned back in her chair, her legal instincts immediately waking from dormancy. I thought Martin Gray was handling that case? He was, Drew replied, his tone tight. But he's out. Conflict of interest. She needs a new attorney, someone sharp, someone the DA won't underestimate. I thought of you. Alexis frowned. You thought of me? Drew, last I checked, you filed restraining orders against me and half my family. I can't even attend Scout's birthday parties because of you. I know, Drew said quietly. And I'm willing to fix that. Alexis's heart skipped. Fix it how? There was a heavy silence before he spoke again. If you agree to represent Willow, if you take this case and you win, I'll drop every restraining order. You'll see Scout again. Molly, Christina, everyone. You'll get your family back. For a long moment, Alexis said nothing. She stared out her office window at the Port Charles skyline, her mind racing through the implications. Defending Willow meant defending the woman accused of nearly killing Drew himself. It meant reopening old wounds, risking her sobriety, and possibly alienating every person she loved. But it also meant redemption, not just for Willow, but for herself. Drew, she said slowly, I'm not sure that's a deal you can legally make. Maybe not legally, he admitted. But personally? It's the only way I can live with this. Scout deserves her mother and grandmother to coexist, and Willow deserves a fair defense. At that same moment, at the courthouse, DA Robert Scorpio was already reviewing the preliminary evidence. He looked up from the file, his expression grim. Willow Corinthos, no priors, but the weapon was unregistered, and the victim was unarmed. This doesn't look good. Jordan Ashford crossed her arms, her detective instincts peaked. There's more to this story. I've seen the security footage, she wasn't aiming to kill. It looked accidental. Robert exhaled sharply. Maybe so. But the media's painting her as another mob-adjacent Corinthos accessory. The optics are terrible. Back at the Invader, Alexis was pacing now, her mind replaying every case she'd ever lost, every client she couldn't save. She'd spent years rebuilding her credibility after her disbarment, clawing her way back into journalism and limited legal consulting. But defending Willow? That was different. That was dangerous, and deeply personal. Molly entered the room, concern etched on her face. Mom? What's wrong? Alexis hesitated, then said, Drew just offered to drop the restraining orders. If I defend Willow in court. Molly blinked. That's huge. But Mom, this is Willow we're talking about. She's facing life in prison if this goes the wrong way. You've been out of full-time practice for years. Are you ready for that kind of courtroom pressure again? I don't know, Alexis admitted softly. But if it means I can see Scout again, if it means healing this family, maybe I have to try. Meanwhile, in the Courtroom mansion, Drew and Michael sat across from each other in the study. The tension between them was thick, the air charged with unspoken history. You think Alexis can handle it? Michael asked, skeptically. I know she can, Drew replied. She's one of the sharpest legal minds in this town. She's beaten worse odds. Michael leaned forward. But she's your ex's mother. Are you really ready to trust her with your future, with Scout's future, after everything that happened? Drew's eyes softened. This isn't about me. It's about doing what's right. Alexis made mistakes, but she's never stopped trying to do the right thing. Willow needs that kind of fight in her corner. Later that evening, Alexis found herself standing outside Drew's door, the autumn wind biting at her face. She hesitated before knocking, her fingers trembling slightly. When Drew opened the door, there was a flicker of old familiarity in his eyes, the kind that reminded her of all the moments when life had been simpler, before ELQ takeovers, before restraining orders, before loss. "You came," he said quietly. "I'm still not sure why," Alexis replied, stepping inside. "But if we're doing this, I need everything. Every file, every statement, every detail of what happened that night." Drew nodded and handed her a folder. "You'll find it all in there. But Alexis, one thing. Don't let her take the fall for something she didn't mean to do." Alexis raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you're defending her now." "I am," Drew admitted, almost to himself. "Because I know what fear looks like. And I saw it in her eyes before the gun went off." Across town, Carly was pacing again, this time in the Metro Court office, her phone pressed to her ear. "Olivia, I can't just sit by and watch this. Drew's losing it. He's making deals with Alexis, for crying out loud." Olivia sighed. "Carly, maybe this is his way of finding peace. You know what losing Scout's connection to Alexis did to him. He's just trying to make things right." Carly clenched her jaw. "Yeah, well, peace has a funny way of blowing up in Port Charles." The next day, the courthouse was a storm of flashbulbs and whispers as Willow arrived with Alexis at her side. The sight sent murmurs rippling through the crowd. Reporters swarmed, cameras clicked, and somewhere in the back, Drew stood silently, watching with a mixture of guilt and hope. "Mrs. Corinthos," one reporter shouted. "Do you have any comment about the charges?" Willow kept her eyes forward, gripping Alexis's arm tightly. Alexis whispered, "Don't engage. Focus on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth." Inside the courtroom, the proceedings began. Judge Walterson presided, his gavel striking like a thunderclap.